things just became a little bit repetitive, going out and chasing the highs, and then the lows that came with that. And sleep is the biggest thing that I've realised out of like taking everything else out of the equation, how much it affects me. It takes time and discipline, and I think trying to cut everything out at once, it's just, it can be a bit overwhelming. Got through a couple of heats of a audition round for a girl band, got into that girl band, and it was like, you know, the time of my life. It was what I always dreamed of doing. We did all sorts of things that make me cringe thinking about them now. We were performing outside Sainsbury shopping centre with a stage made out of upturned shopping baskets. I actually bought a pair of CDJs and a mixer with some money that I'd saved up, and I took them with me to Ibiza, but I'd never DJ'd on them at that point. So it was, they were like fresh out of the box. Over time, things just became a little bit repetitive in terms of like going out and chasing the highs. And then the lows that came with that were starting to outweigh the good times. And I started to question whether or not I was actually, you know, enjoying myself on the whole, how bad my anxiety would be the next day. And anxiety is something I've unfortunately had to deal with a lot over the years, especially being in this industry. The byproducts have been the reason I've stayed sober, and it's been getting on for 4 years. It will be 4 years this November.
We'd like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for the support so far on this project. It means the absolute world to us.
However, we've noticed that around 75% of you who listen and watch the show haven't yet hit the subscribe or like button.
So in order for this community to grow and allow us to build this project, we have a small request from you.
Please hit the subscribe or like button on the app that you're listening or watching this show. Your commitment... What were you laughing at? I did a really good job, didn't I? Right, do another one. Please hit the subscribe or like button on the app you're watching or listening this show. Listening this show.
Remember to smile.
I'm always smiling.
You weren't.
Was I not? Stop it. Kelly's fucking waiting for us outside, bro.
Composed. Right, let's do it.
Please hit the subscribe or like button on the app you're listening to or watching this fucking show. Right, come on, just one more. Please hit the subscribe or like button. Your commitment is our commitment.
Let's do this.
Fuck off, come on, more.
Yeah, I'm not going to cheeseball it up, but I'll go, let's do this.
That'll do. We're rolling. Straight back in. Straight back in. Kellie Allen, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
Oh no, it's good to see you. I just wrote down here, because I can't remember if this is true, but the last time I saw you in person, was it on the Lost Boar party in Ibiza? It was.
It was. Yeah, I was just talking about that to someone actually. I was saying that was that the only time that we played together? I think it might have been.
Definitely was. And it was a class party as well.
It really was. Those boat parties are crazy. They just go off from the moment you get on. There's no warm-up set involved in.
You just got to go straight in because everyone has to sit down until you get so far out of the.
Got to get out of the port.
The port, you know about this being a skipper.
You skipper?
Yeah, and I've been on a few boat parties as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but when you have to, everyone's sat down and everyone's fucking raging just to get up and just get in it. And then as soon as they give you you're looking at the captain, you kind of as a DJ, you got like your head, you're going. And then as soon as they give you the green light, you're like, boom!
Do you remember they used to play that sort of safety message? That was
and everyone's like, boo!
Yeah, and we always said we were going to sample that and make a track out of it, but so far I don't think anyone has. So
there you go.
Could be one to revisit.
Yeah. But that was 2000 and, was it 18 or 19, one of the two?
Yeah, would have been, well, I don't know, actually. It could have been earlier.
Really?
I think it was 2017. Just judging by my hair in the picture because it changed a lot.
Yeah.
I went completely blonde bob after that, and then and now it's.
So it could have been 17. So
I think so. I think 17, if I had to guess.
7 years.
Yeah. Time flies,
doesn't it? As if it's been that long. I thought it was 19 because I was thinking it was just before the lockdowns and everything.
No,
but
definitely before that.
Wow.
Yeah.
But that's what we were just on about with Goddard as well.
Time.
Is that time, you know, and it just flies by.
Everything's mulched into those 3 years were just a blur.
Yeah. They really were. But the reason I wanted to get you down, obviously, because I know you're very sound, but also seeing your progression from that point to where you are now. So let's talk about that. So let's go before we last saw each other on the boat parties, what was your journey into music, and like, what does that look like? Where did you start? Where was your early influences, and to where you are now?
Okay, well, not many people know this about me, actually. I probably haven't mentioned it for a reason, but sod it. But I actually really always wanted to be a singer from yay high, from a toddler. I wanted to be a pop star. That was my calling in life, and that's how I kind of shaped the early stages of my career in music. I was into musical theatre at school, applied for and got into the Brit School for musical theatre. Went there for a couple of years, and they used to hold auditions at the Brit School. They pin them up on the notice board, and it would be, girl band or, solo singer or X Factor style auditions. And I went to a few and didn't do so well. I mean, my confidence back then was pretty low.
How old were you then?
College age. So what was that, 15, 16?
16, 17, something like, yeah.
Eventually got through a couple of heats of a audition round for a girl band, and got into that girl band. And it was like, the time of my life. It was what I always dreamed of doing. I loved the Spice Girls and, grew up in the 2000s pop culture. Eventually, the college wasn't happy with my attendance rate because I was having to drop out of class to, rehearse and record. So they made me choose. And at the time I thought, well, I've got this far without any qualifications. I know I want to do this. I know I can sing, dance and act. So I don't really need a piece of paper that says you've qualified in this particular aspect of your life. So I decided to ditch college and go full time into the music. And that was, that carried me into my sort of all the way through my teens into my early 20s. And I was in that band. It dispersed, and three of us made a new one, and we were based in Bristol. So every week I would drive down to Bristol.
What was the name of the band?
Oh God, so good.
Come on, I've got to know.
It was called Envy.
Oh, nice. I like it.
And we loved it. We
Wicked.
did all sorts of things that make me cringe thinking about them now. I think one of our highlight worst gigs of my life was performing outside Sainsbury shopping centre with a stage made out of upturned shopping baskets around the entrance.
Wow, that is amazing.
And it was in Canvey Island of all places. It was so random.
Class.
So I did that for a while, and then one of the girls fell pregnant, and naturally we started to sort of make our own ways, and I continued as a solo artist. And one of the producers that made the music for the backing tracks of our girl band, he was into the dance music scene. So me and him, we teamed up and we wrote loads of songs together and recorded them. Some of them were for sync opportunities. So I actually earned quite a bit of money, which was quite good money back then, for my tracks appearing on like the background in Coronation Street and Big Brother and things like that, which was pretty cool.
How long ago was this then, Kellie?
I'm really bad with years, but I'd like to say it was probably around 2010.
Okay.
And in this time, I wanted to sort of spread my wings and be a bit more diverse with, who I worked with. And I got in touch. I don't even know how it happened now. My dad was a work colleague of one of the Soul Avengers, Wayne, I think.
All right, okay. Wow.
They worked together, and Wayne sent out a message to a load of his contacts in the industry saying, this is Kellie, she's a great singer, here's some of her work if anyone needs a featuring artist. So that message got sent, and then I got picked up by quite a few producers, one of them being Pete Gooding. And I featured on one of his tracks, which went out on Toolroom. And then Toolroom Records asked me if I'd do a publishing deal. And that kind of cemented the start of my career in the sort of dance music space. Eventually, I kind of fell out of love with the singing songwriting side of things, and was quite fancying the idea of learning how to DJ and produce my own music. I think one of the factors for that was that I produced up my own vocals pretty good at the time. I was using GarageBand to, double track and harmonise, and when I sent them over to producers, 9 times out of 10, I really wouldn't be happy with the way they then edited the vocal into the track. So I wondered if I would have a better chance of just making the music myself as well. And then I think it eventually evolved and progressed into me stopping singing and songwriting and you know, falling in love with the compositional side of production music, like producing music.
Yeah. So the transition into DJing, what year was that? When did you kind of get on the decks for the first time?
So it was all around the time that I met up with Pete Gooding.
Oh, so it was that time.
So he decided he had kind of reached the peak in his career where he didn't want to pursue it as an artist anymore, but he'd naturally started mentoring a lot of artists that were up and coming and really enjoyed giving back. So his plan was to start a management company for artists. And knowing my background as a PA, because at the time I was working full-time in London as a personal assistant, he saw an opportunity for me to come on board as his PA. But the catch was, if you can call it a catch, was that he was actually moving to Ibiza to start this new business. And did I want to go with him? And I was like, yeah, why not? It was like one of the easiest, hardest decisions I've ever made in my life, you know? So that took me to Ibiza, and one of the main reasons for me wanting to move there was because I wanted to seek out more opportunities for me as an artist. So I actually bought a pair of CDJs and a mixer with some money that I'd saved up, and I took them with me to Ibiza, but I'd never DJ'd on them at that point. So they were like fresh out of the box. And I had this intent, because back then I still was singing. I had this intention that I wanted to be like DJ Ray, where I'd sort of play on the decks, but also pick up the microphone and start singing. So that was kind of a little vision I had at the time. But then I sort of, as I say, I progressed away from wanting to be a vocalist so much and focus on the production side of things. So
you knew, like, you hadn't even mixed on those decks, and you just moved to Ibiza with a set of decks you'd never practiced on.
Yeah,
that's like intuition on point. You just trusted your gut, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I really like have so much gratitude for those moments, because there's been loads of synchronicities like that in my career where I've been so close to giving up, for example, and then there's been a massive sign for me to give it one last push, and that's been the breakthrough moment. There was, skipping ahead a little bit, one moment where I thought I wasn't going to reach my potential as a DJ, and that I should probably focus on like being more serious and having a proper business. And I packed up those same decks that they came in and got them ready to sell on one of the Facebook groups in Ibiza. And just as I'd packed them all away, there was a competition for that Sankey's was running. And it was for all female DJs that lived on the island all year round. They wanted to sort of raise the glass ceiling and give us an opportunity to step into the industry. And I remember thinking, I've just made this decision for myself. And I just met my boyfriend at the time, Sam. So he didn't even know I DJ'd. So I sort of told him about it, and he said, yeah, go for it. Like, record the mix and see what happens. And I did. And that led me to, it was like a heats competition where each week there'd be female acts sort of going up against each other. And we went through the winter months doing that, doing those rounds, and then ended up winning the whole thing and getting the sort of top prize, as it was, which was a weekly residency at Tribal Sessions, and that really kick-started everything.
That's massive.
Yeah, I know, right? It was,
because especially at the time, Tribal Sessions was like at Sankey's. It was hand in hand, right? It was the best. It was either that or Viva Warriors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it started to take off in Ibiza at the time as well, didn't it? Because Tribal Sessions originally is from Manchester, Sankey's, my neck of the woods.
Yeah.
And I know that in Playa d'Embossa, when Sankey's was there was a debate initially. A lot of people were saying, like, is it really going to work in Ibiza? And then obviously it did. And Tribal Sessions and Viva Warriors were massive, weren't they?
If I kind of got my roots in Manchester by getting a gig in the Spectrum at Tribal Sessions, and just that one show in the Spectrum was fucking massive for me. I was like, I've made it. I hadn't even released tunes at the time. I was playing with Sharples and Sanders.
Right.
And we got like, we'd do a Mute, and Mute would do like Room 2. And that was huge. So to get a residency there for the whole summer in Ibiza, by the way, the Ibiza one was sick as well.
Yeah, it was.
Because I was a worker in 2012, 2013. And that was like Mecca for the workers.
Yeah.
Everyone went there.
Yeah. Literally, my mate sent me a picture 5 days ago from 2017, I think it was, or 16, 17. And it's me and him with Steve Lawler in the back room at Sankey's in Playa d'Embossa. But it's mad. It's interesting, isn't it? Because we were having this similar conversation before, and I noticed when Kelly was saying then, she packed her decks away, ready to get rid of them. And then it was just this, and asking Sam, and he's gone, try it. like what Goddard was saying about his
girlfriend
and his girlfriend, and obviously the bad news he had. He was like, should I really do it? And she went, just go in the room and produce. And it's where does it take you? And Barry, chapter and verse again, just touching decks for the first time. Never touched them before. And I never knew that, what Kelly was saying then. It's interesting, bought the decks, but never even touched them, and then come to Ibiza. It's them pivotal moments, and I like the way you phrased it. The easiest hard decision that I had to make was moving over to Ibiza. I just think it's them key moments in it where your life, when you look back, you can go, if I'd have just made that decision, it wouldn't be where it is now, clearly. But it's them little moments that mean something big, yeah.
I can relate to that, because I remember when I got my release on Viva in 2015, and I was working in the call centre at the time in London. I've mentioned this before, but when I look back... Looking back. Inside joke.
Yeah, he always does it.
Yeah, I always say, looking back. Looking back.
Mike and the mechanics plug.
Looking back, I had no money coming in. I was living in London. Me and my wife were living in Brixton. She had a full-time job, and I was making good money in this call centre selling business insurance. And I got that release, and the next day I handed my notice in, and I was making, I was on about 150 quid a gig. I had about 3 gigs a month or something, right? And when I put myself back in that position, I'm like, wow, I wouldn't, now that's a very risky decision to go from 2 or 3 grand a month to 400 quid.
Yeah.
My wife, girlfriend at the time, said, I'll support you should do it. So we all got support in some way from our other half, so people who were closest to us. But I just knew. It's like an intuition. You went to Ibiza without even opening those boxes, just because you knew.
Yeah.
And there's something that I keep saying all the time recently, which is about the gut and trusting your gut. It's usually 95% of the time it's right. Yeah. Don't know why, but it really is.
I think intuition is like a really powerful tool in life, and I'm definitely more intuitive and listening to myself and being very aware of feelings that come up now than I was back then, but even so managed to get myself over there. And I think there's, I really believe in the good omen, bad omen scenario. And I remember reading The Alchemist just before I moved to Ibiza, by the way, and that really sealed the deal.
We've talked about The Alchemist so many times in the show. Well, we do a feature called Pass the Book. Okay. Where the previous guest hands the next guest a book, and not knowing who that guest is, who's coming on next. And we've had The Alchemist now 3 times.
Wow.
3 times recommended back. It keeps cropping up in conversation. And
it's definitely one to read, I think, for every. And it was like, because I guess a real crossroads moment. I was, don't get me wrong, I was so excited. It wasn't a hard decision at all moving to Ibiza, but moving country, moving home, all of these things are
difficult.
Supposedly some of the most stressful times we have in our lives. And for me, it was just everything really lined up. It was a breeze to move over there. And yes, obviously, when you arrive somewhere new, it's it took me a while to adapt. I moved over there without knowing anybody, which aside from Pete, who I'd moved to go and work with, it could feel pretty lonely. Yeah. And Ibiza is an intense environment to live. I think a lot of people would say that, it either chews you up and spits you out, or it brings you so much, greatness to your life. And I'm very fortunate that it panned out in a way that's really enriched my life and helped me to elevate myself as a person, but also like really fulfill my passion. So yeah, I feel very grateful that I get to call it home.
Yeah, and you've managed to stay on the good side of Ibiza as opposed to going down the other dark route. So I've done the seasons working for Zoo Project were just seasons where I was getting on it all the time and just being a worker, right? But 2016, when I'd already been signed to Viva for a year and things were starting to roll up, it chewed me up and spat me out. And I wasn't moving there full time like you, but we did 6 months there, and the idea was to go out there and be creative. And my manager at the time went, "You're not going to be creative. You're not going to do anything." And I didn't. I made one track that whole summer because I had groups of people. So this is what I wanted to touch on. I had groups of people coming in and leaving, then they'd leave and other people would come in. It was just this massive cycle of friendship groups. So come out. They're only there for a week. You're there for months. So how did you find managing that balance? Because you've clearly done it well, you've managed to stay on the right side of that. And
yeah, I think, there was an element of, I was in my mid-20s when I moved there. and I've been living there for 11 years now.
Wow.
So there's an element of going through the process of, going out a lot, partying, going out sometimes for 3 days, and a lot of bonding sessions occurred in those times. But I think as time went by and I began to lay my roots down there, not only am I an artist, but as I say, when I met Sam, we very quickly got into business together, and that's now 7 or 8 years in. So, as we are carving our way through life on the island, it gets to a point where you start to feel like that way of living isn't very sustainable. And for me, over time, things just became a little bit repetitive in terms of like going out and chasing the highs. And then the lows that came with that were starting to outweigh the good times. And I started to question whether or not I was actually, enjoying myself on the whole. And it kind of got to a breaking point for me. And it was actually something I was dabbling with, the idea of going sober, just before we went into the pandemic.
Ah, right, okay.
So I'd been curious about it for a while. So actually, when I look back, it had obviously been affecting me for a while before I actually managed to hit it on the head. And all through the pandemic, I was sober. And then as soon as the world opened back up again and the floodgates opened in Ibiza and we were allowed to go out, it all just went out the window, because I kind of felt like that was my reward for, why not? I was so good through lockdown, I deserve it. And that lasted all throughout the summer. It was a crazy summer. And then got to November and I was back at that place where I was just like, for me, it was just a question of like how bad my anxiety would be the next day. And anxiety is something I've unfortunately had to deal with a lot over the years, especially being in this industry. So it just got to the point where I thought, well, let's do a year challenge, because that's exciting and you can get behind an idea like that and feel like it's something achievable. And then as the 1 year was up, like you were saying about at the start of the chat, coming out of the pandemic, my career really started to go considerably well in the right direction. And I don't think that was a coincidence, because during that time I'd really like honed in my discipline to myself, listened to like the things that were good for me and kind of cast off the things that weren't. As a result of not going out and drinking anymore and partying, I was spending days in the studio that would usually be spent on the sofa, hungover or in bed. So things like my motivation improved, my focus, my inspiration. The list is absolutely endless. But they weren't necessarily the reasons why I stopped. It was kind of like the byproducts of that. But the byproducts have been the reason I've stayed sober. And it's been getting on for 4 years. It would be 4 years this November. So
wow.
It's gone
Amazing.
so fast as well. So
I have that reaction, that wow, because I know how difficult it is in that industry when you go to the green room and you're in the booths and then you go onto the airport.
In Ibiza.
And then living in Ibiza. As well, I was living in South London.
Exactly.
And if you live in Ibiza, so when you go back from the gigs, you go on tour and then you go back home to Ibiza, which is more enticing than anywhere in the world because there's parties on every night. You've got friends there for 6 months of the year. You've got groups of friends everywhere. And because you live on the island, you know a lot of people as well. So, like a lot of willpower's required there, Kelly.
Yeah. And I think what helped me massively was that the first proper year of me going into that journey, there was nothing going on in Ibiza. It was completely shut up shop. There wasn't a season, so I didn't have that pressure to go out or the feeling of being out and not enjoying myself. The occasions that I would go out and be in those environments were much smaller, much more contained, and it was still pretty hard to cut myself off at that point and take myself home when everyone else is like going for it. But it just didn't match my frequency anymore either. Like in the space of sitting around a table full of friends and then who were drinking and then getting up to go to the toilet and coming back again, you'd feel how much the energy had changed because you'd left that space. And that would be like, okay, time for me to head on home. And I used to go home and I'd order a pizza straight away as a sort of a reward, a little pat on the back to myself that I'd managed to do what was right for me. that was my sort of coping mechanism for a while, just to sort of go home and have my own space and eat junk food.
You know what, though?
For a little bit.
That's a better trade-off.
Yeah.
Having a pizza, I know it's maybe not great for you as long as you're not doing it all the time. If that's your trade-off for not going out and getting on it for 2 days,
it's
a good trade-off.
And that's my advice to people as well. You know, trying to be this version of yourself in the early days, like the very best version of yourself. It takes time and discipline, and I think trying to cut everything out at once, it's just it can be a bit overwhelming. So for me, the trade-off was, you know, I'll leave this party as it's just starting to get going because it doesn't feel good for me to be here anymore. But I'll go home and enjoy my own company, stick Netflix on and order a pizza and some ice cream. And that worked for me in the short term when I was just getting into the groove of it.
And now you're sat here 4 years sober.
Yeah. And it really, and I mean this, it really has gone so fast. And I don't know whether that's the nature of like what I do for a career, the nature of where I live, because time does seem to evaporate.
You can relate. You live on the island as well.
It's very fast paced. But I think when it's the right thing for you, and you get to a point where you start to see the benefits, it's so much easier to continue on. And people say to me all the time, "But won't you have a drink like here and there, or like when you're at your wedding, for example?" But I don't view it in the same way anymore. So it's not bringing anything to the table for me. So why would I want to spoil my wedding with a hangover the next day? That's honestly how I view it now. And I think just being able to go through the same scenarios over and over again, you're strengthening a muscle. So being in the green room, not necessarily my favourite thing to do.
I can imagine, yeah.
But, you know, I will do it. And I think it's important because that's when I'll be able to connect with people and have a little chat. You can't really do that in the booth when you're DJing or watching other people play. So, you know, slowly but surely I've strengthened that muscle, and it's enabled me to be around people and be in those environments and actually still have a really good time and, you know, vibe off of their energy and, you know, still laugh and joke and have a dance and stay there till 4 a.m. And it's not that difficult for me anymore.
Well, because at the start, sorry to cut you off there, but at the start, you feel like you're missing out because you've got a different perspective, but your perspective on alcohol and drugs or partying has changed. So you're not missing out anymore. Whereas, because when you start something like that, I get like that. If I'm not going to drink for like 6 months, I did a year as well in 2022. And in January, even though I'd not normally drink in January, everyone does dry January. After 2 weeks, I was like, I really want to drink because I feel like I'm missing out because I've told myself I can't do something. But it's perspective.
Because I feel like I'm missing out.
You feel like you're missing out. You feel it, yeah. It's the way I'm even, saying it and realising what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's like what Kelly was saying there. Is I experienced that as well. I live in Ibiza, and it's where I've gone into recovery and I don't do anything, anymore. And it's a place that went for 20 odd years, partying every year, space opening, space closing, manumission, passion, all that amazing time. And you get asked to go out with friends and people who are over on holiday. And when you stop doing something, it's like in the book, The 5 a.m. Club, you have destruction, as in the pathways. You got to break them down. And then installation, new pathways, and then integration. And it says you've got to do it over 60 days. I think it says 22, 66. It takes that time. And what I found is at first I had a bit of anxiety just in my own head out. And I'm like I've got sparkling water. And then sometimes people say, "Why are you not drinking? Why?" And then a lot of the time when you just say, "Oh, I'm not drinking because I don't want to," it's like, "Oh, I really think I need to stop drinking," or whatever. Some people I'll have them conversations, and then now when I go out, it's like what Kelly was saying there. It's like I actually have a really good time, and I like the way you positioned it again. It's just not my frequency, and it gets to a point where the frequency will shift, and I'm like, I'm ready to go home now. Yeah. And I do the same, ice cream or chocolate or pizza. Or I did it the other night in Playa del Bosso. I went to that Piadina pizza that's always been there in the front. Got a slice of pizza and went home. And he enjoyed the night, but it's just changing them pathways. And like you were saying, it's how we feel. Sometimes I feel like I'm missing out. I got that at first, and then I was like, yeah, but what am I missing out on? I don't want that anxiety. I don't want to feel like down in myself. I don't want to sit on the couch all day. And off the back of that, the output, you're more productive with things that you're doing.
Oh, it's no coincidence, like you said. There's no coincidence that you are thriving in the industry now. Yeah. Because if you hadn't, just put it into perspective in terms of time and reps. Yeah. it's all about reps, right? All those reps you would have missed in the studio.
Yeah.
All those reps you would have missed teaching yourself new skills on Ableton, Logic, whatever you work on, you know? So it's reps, and that's wasted time that you would have been on the couch. And again, we've talked about this. It's not coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it also opens up this, the opportunity for you to feel more of the negative emotions that you feel, because like we're depleted, right? So, you know, all the negative self-doubt would come in, the feelings of not being good enough, they would all get massively heightened by my hangover and, you know, the days after partying. And they're for sure things that, you know, I'm still working through today, but wow, back then it was a different kettle of fish. And those things alone, even if you're not feeling particularly like slobbish or lazy, they will stop you from being motivated enough to do the things that you should be doing for yourself, like exercising, putting the reps in at the studio. So even if I didn't feel too bad physically speaking, mentally I'd be tearing myself apart, and it would just be like sabotage, really. So, and I think actually that was probably the biggest reason for me to quit, because I was really fed up of tearing pieces out of myself, and, you know, not having that accountability towards my own actions, and just being, you know, true to myself. And actually one thing that I observed over the first year of my sobriety was like, I really had to find out who I was again. I really struggled with my authenticity, because who am I without, you know, the drink and the rest of it? Who am I? Like, I thought I was this really confident, big personality, when actually I'm way more introverted than I would have believed. I really enjoy my own company. And I feel like that version of myself wasn't a true representation of who I am, truly. So it took a while to accept that, and to work through it, and, you know, be comfortable with who I am naturally. But it was a really, really sort of key moment for me, like observing it and sitting with it and being like, okay, you know, all of this stuff's coming up. I'm working through it. So,
well, I'm actually relating a lot to this.
Yeah,
in a big way. We've been, because I've had a few moments recently. I've been pretty stressed with work and, you know, just personal life, loads of stuff going on, and it kind of gets to you. And I've had impulses, I want to drink, and, you know, if I'm going to a social situation, I used to just have a few drinks before I went out to lower those barriers. And I don't think I'm doing the work, but I don't think I've got to the level that you have in terms of the reflection. I mean, one thing that I have learned through therapy that I did in lockdown was compassion. So one thing you mentioned there was about beating yourself up and the self-sabotage, which we all do, but to the point where you're just kind of hammering it all the time. And I'm definitely better at it now, but I'll just do something really simple that, you know, just human error, and I'll beat myself up. And it's just remembering to be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Because when you're not, that's when you lean into the self-sabotage, the drink, drugs, whatever it is that's not good for you. So yeah, it was really inspirational to hear that, actually, and to see you've come 4 years and, you know, come full circle, and now doing what you're doing. It's really nice.
Thank
to see.
you. Thanks. It's still a very much a work in progress, I think, in terms of self-awareness and self-acceptance.
Yeah.
It's something that it's obviously been a big part of my life, and taking the booze away from it was like a really big shift and decision for myself. Probably one of the decisions I'm most proud of. But the work, it's not the magic bullet. The work doesn't stop there. Once you've mastered that, like I said, you're having to face things as they are. There's no masking, there's no filtering, there's a running away from it. And I actually went and had some therapy early on in that journey, and my therapist explained, you know, you're absorbing everything around you as it is. Like you're taking it in as it is, all the frequencies and energies around you. You're not, it's very intense for you, and it will feel like that. And I think I'm a particularly sensitive person anyway, so even more so, I'm very susceptible to taking those energies in. But yeah, I think the work that I continue to do on myself, I'm not perfect. I definitely could exercise more than I do, and there's a lot of things I have to put in place in my life for me to operate at my best. And I struggle sometimes. I'll be honest. It's a hard thing to keep going. So yeah, it really, even like as I sit here today, I'm really working hard to become the optimized version of myself mentally. I think, it's not easy what we do and the industry that we're in, but for the most part, I absolutely love it, and very grateful that I get to, do this full time, and I want it to continue. So it's vital to me that I, put the work in that's required for me to run at this level.
Yeah, well, obviously you're on the road quite a lot now as well, Kelly. So the touring takes out of you. I know. Yeah. It did for me, but I think a lot of that came down to how I was looking after myself on the road, which was not looking after myself. But it sounds like you've got it nailed. So how's your routine on the road then?
Yeah, so I mean, if I take my South America tour as an example, I was very lucky Sam came with me as tour manager. It was really nice to have him with me, and definitely an experience that we bonded from.
Amazing.
And we really tried to stick to our routine as if we were at home. So although we were hopping from hotel to hotel, we were working out in every gym that we could. If the hotel didn't have one, we'd join one like down the road. Taking supplements, eating well. We're both very interested in nutrition. Sam definitely leads the way there, so it's quite easy for me to follow. I journal and write down my thoughts as they come. I think that's a good way to get things out of your mind and onto paper. Trying to get sleep wherever is possible. I
love that. Just whenever you can, whenever it is a case of that sometimes. You've got late sets,
Yeah, on the plane. I mean, naturally, I don't think I would fall asleep on a plane, but you know what it's like when you're so tired. It's just, you're doing the nodding dog next to the person.
On someone's shoulder.
Yeah, it's, and they're like snoring and waking yourself up.
Yeah, that's the worst.
The glamour. Yeah. Just, and being kind to myself. Usually I take Mondays off as my Sunday, and sometimes even Tuesdays. I'm not operating at my fullest. So you have to accept that we're predominantly performing on a weekend. So the weekend is Monday and Tuesday now. And, just
I love that.
Yeah.
That's a really nice way to look at it, because you haven't got the weekend is just pushed back because you're maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday sometimes if you've got especially in the summer.
Yeah, and even if you're not playing on the Sunday, you could be travelling. Yeah. Sometimes travelling on the Monday.
I think that's half the job though.
Yeah.
The 2 hours or 3 hours you're playing, if you're sober as well, it's fucking fun, right? It's the travel. I used to say that it's the travelling I'm getting paid for. Yeah. I'm getting paid to sit in an airport. I'm getting paid to go on a 9-hour flight.
Yeah,
that's going to be a bit of a...
And you think about it, and it's like, but I'm just sitting there watching films. But actually, it's the mental capacity that you have to be alert. You're like, you want to get in the queue first so you can get your carry-on in the overhead locker. It's just, being on like high alert the whole time that you're on the move. So that I think... And sleep is the biggest thing that I've realised out of like taking everything else out of the equation, how much it affects me and how much it must have affected me when I was boozing. It's sleep. It's I swear like 80-90% of it comes down to lack of sleep, because you can still feel that hangover on a Monday and that grogginess.
Yeah, I noticed it this week. I had a really bad night. I can't remember when it was, Wednesday, and sometimes our dog jumps in the bed.
Oh, really?
Like 1 in the morning, 1:30 in the morning. And I couldn't get back to sleep. And the next day I went to the gym, and it was just cardio day. And I went in the stepper. I usually do like 45 minutes or an hour if I'm feeling really good. And I did 10 minutes and I was done, like gassed. And it was only one night and I hadn't even had a drink. So then when you put alcohol and gear and all the other stuff and dancing and sweating and no water, all those other things in the equation, you can imagine what you were doing to your body for even just one weekend.
Yeah.
And you don't feel it because obviously you're feeling great and you've been up for 2 days and you don't really understand. But if you try and stay up that long when you haven't had a drink or done any gear, I can't do it. I can't get past midnight now.
Yeah.
Mate,
I physically ache.
I said it this week. I'm so glad I didn't have a whoop when I was out partying, because
I would have sent you
would
under.
have messaged me and gone, take the band off.
You're gone.
No point wearing it. Because it's like, it was Missy's birthday on Monday and we went all day I Dream at Playa Solil. And we was in there, we left. And I got home for like 2-3 a.m, obviously just drinking water, and went to bed. And the next day I said to Mish, I was like, I feel drained today. And I looked at my whoop, and my whoop was like, yeah, your sleep could be better, but it wasn't like really, really bad. But and then I went, how have I, obviously I was a lot younger, but I just think, how tired must my body have been, or my mind have been? Because I've slept, I've done 7.5 hours, which is still pretty decent, but because it's just out of sync with my normal sleeping routine. And I know what Kellie's saying, because I've been coming across the same conversation this week about my whoop and myself was, wow, and I said to my wife, I realised how much sleep impacts my mind, because I didn't feel mentally, I felt 15-20% down mentally, as if I'd had a drink, but I'd not touched a drink of alcohol.
No.
I was drinking water, but it was the sleep. And then this week, and I've come over here sleeping like a babby. It makes a big difference.
It does. For me, it's the biggest priority. I think sleep first, and then in terms of having a routine, I can't really abide to a routine that's got specific times attached to it, but it needs to be like a checklist instead. So. And again, I could be doing better at this right now, but exercise, meditation, journaling, grounding, eating well. Rather than saying, okay, gym at 6 a.m, which I was doing so well up until the South America tour. Actually, I've realised that by trying to get myself out of bed at 6 a.m, I'm compromising on the amount of sleep that I've had over the weekend, and then feeling like I failed because I didn't get that first part of the routine done in the morning. So I've kind of had to rethink that now, and waking up a bit later and going to the gym. The reason I go so early is because I really don't like working out around a load of people. I really, really don't. So going at 6 a.m, it would be practically empty for the first hour. I'm going to have to compromise with that now, I think, and just really get my head down and cap on, headphones on, and just zone out and get it done, because it's now affecting me because I'm not exercising the 5-6 times a week I was. And it's so important to me. So, but sleep comes first, 100%.
Yeah. And I've noticed it might be the same for you, Kellie, but obviously you're a DJ and an artist, producer, you're touring now. And I've seen on your socials the South America tour, how busy that was. And obviously you've got the business as well, and the hub, and you're doing other things, as well as managing, your own wellness and your own well-being. I know in the winter, I find it super easy to do that routine, because it's just different. The island's completely different. But during the summer months, it's super difficult to keep that routine going. But doing all the things that you're doing, how have you been managing to do that? Is it from writing stuff down and having like a kind of plan of what you're going to be doing and sticking to it? Or
on good days, yeah. But sometimes I feel like I'm just sort of going along with the flow, and as things come up that need to be sorted, instead of having the preparation behind me, I'm sort of just doing things on the fly as they're due in, like, deadlines for press interviews or things like this. I'm like, oh God, I need to do that. I haven't done it. So kind of just surviving at that point when it gets too much. But then there are other points in my life where I've got a bit more capacity to even write a list and stick to it. And they're the moments that I really want to try and be consistent with, because it does really make a difference and impact how optimized I am as a person and how successful I've been with everything that week or month. So sometimes it's just done on the fly, and other times I'm really proactive. And
yeah, that's what I've started to do recently, because before I'd do the same. I'd beat myself up, because I weren't at B Fit in the morning, and I'd be off with my missus. I'd be like a bit snappy. And when we had our friend Amalia over this week, I was very flexible with my agenda of how I do things, and I've been learning programming and changing the wiring of how to just be a bit more flexible. And it's like I said to you when we was on the phone the other day, I said, mate, I've not been out for a hike in God knows how long, and it's important for me. And on that day I finished on the phone with you, and I just got my stuff, and Mish said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just going to head out for a hike. Went up Satalaya.
Nice.
It was like an hour and a half, no headphones, no phone, nothing. And I came back and I was just like, oof. And it's one of the many facets that you have that contribute to your wellness. And I know, obviously, listening to this conversation, so I always find it super interesting. I'm just sat listening to everything Kellie's saying about how she does it and that process of change. It's like, look what Goddard was saying before. And during lockdown period, it seems like there's a trend for all of us during that period. We all transformed in different ways, whether it was career path, whether it was elevating our career path, whether it was dealing with grief, whatever it might be. And I find it interesting for Kelly when she said it, she did the opposite during lockdown. A lot of people I know ended up having more. Yeah. She did the opposite, and then it came for her afterwards.
Yeah, and then because you doubled down after because you were like, oh,
like
I've
the
missed
reward.
out. Yeah, the
I've
reward.
done so well.
Yeah.
Let's go for it.
Yeah.
Imagine like we were in one of the ways that we passed the time when we were stuck inside was Sam and I. Also we needed to elevate the hub in these moments where the business was physically closed. So we did what we could and brought the community online and did lots of Facebook streams and free yoga classes on Facebook stream talks. And one of the things Sam and I did to add a bit of comedy into the moment and bring some entertainment was we set up a hub pub quiz in our front room, and it was like loads of empty bottles of booze on the table, and we projected an image of a bar behind us, and we'd get dressed up and he'd wear like a bow tie and I'd find like my most ridiculous sequin outfit that I had in my wardrobe, and we'd run it, and it was brilliant. Wicked. It was something that became a bit of an anchor to us and a lot of people that watched it. But Sam was cracking on throughout the whole thing, and I'm sitting there like the sober one in charge of actually making sure this pub quiz operates the way it needs to. And that was really difficult for me because there was nowhere for me to go in the house. It was just, we lived in a 2-bed. There was nowhere to go and escape from it. So I think that's why when we were allowed to get back to life, I was like, yeah, I'm going for it. I really am. I'm no holding back. But it didn't last very long. So yeah.
Well, it hasn't affected your career. I've seen you absolutely smashing it. You're playing Piv, you're Solid Grooves, like you're all over the world, South America tour. It's amazing, man.
Yeah,
it's
thank
amazing.
you.
Well, it brings us on to the feature. So we didn't get the book out. Do you want to grab it?
Shall I grab it?
Yeah.
Which book?
Is it in your bag?
Yeah, it is. Which book is it?
Well, you'll find out. There's only one in there.
Jacky, my bag's... Where's my bag?
This is smooth. So we did this, the other day we did a podcast. We didn't even do the feature. We forgot because we were in the conversation. Like this is just, time flies, right?
Yeah.
And we forgot to do it all together. So we did a little video on his phone. Last time we did it, but this time we didn't have it on the table and it was your job, Pete.
Call to action.
Call to action, yeah. We're doing that, that recording.
Yeah.
So I introduced the last one.
You did?
You do this one.
Okay.
So this is from...
Goddard. And this is a book I believe, I guess with Roger, I'm guessing with Kelly, I think she's read this book.
Most likely. Or maybe not. The Power of Now. Have you read it?
Do you know, I haven't. I've got the audio book, but I never completed it.
Amazing.
So that is wonderful. Thank you.
No, well, Goddard was in here and he was talking about being... the importance for him being present.
Yeah.
And he'll just, on that note, he'd come back from gigs. He does it now. He comes back and he sits in a beanbag and his dog comes over and he just tells himself or asks himself, am I present? Well, yeah, because I've just said it. And he has and he sits in his own thoughts and he processes what's just happened that weekend. So he's been on gigs for 2 or 3 days. And then he'll just marinate on what just happened. And I think that's beautiful.
Do you know, I attended a talk during the IMS this year, and it was Chloe Kylie. She was a guest speaker, and she actually really touched on that, and it spoke to me so much about how we have this whirlwind of a week or weekend of shows and travel, and you've just performed a festival in front of thousands of people, and you get off the stage, jump in the car, go back to an empty hotel room, and you just sit there, and it's still the adrenaline and everything is still circulating, and it actually requires some effort, like Goddard says, to sort of come back down to earth, process what's just happened, which is amazing, and get back to yourself, get back to your body, your mind. And it really stuck with me because I think that was something that I was finding quite difficult to do afterwards, was get back to myself after being... the energy that you're giving everybody else, then it's really important that you can like come home again and appreciate what just happened. It's super amazing, the feeling of getting to do that. So
yeah, it is. It really
taking
is.
stock and being present in the moment to really appreciate it is very important.
Well, what a beautiful way to end. But before we do, any plugs, anything you want to talk about, the hub releases, anything you want to mention?
Yeah, sure. So the Hub Ibiza Studios is a new concept of ours that we started during lockdown, and it's really flying at the moment. I mean, I can't even get in there anymore. That's how popular it is.
Amazing.
So, but yeah, for anyone that's on the island, I invite you to come down and have a look at our studio. It's super, and we've had a lot of high profile people coming in there and creating, which is nice.
Wicked.
Music wise, I do have some releases coming up. I've got a remix. It's actually not coming out now until October, and it's on Sulfuric.
Oh, wicked.
Which I'm really happy about. It's a remix of a Jason Hurd track. And my PIV EP is in the making as well. It's just having its lead track remixed by someone that I absolutely adore. So I'm looking forward to getting that.
Yes, I'm buzzing for that.
Delivered. Yeah, it's been a while since I did an EP. I think it was 2022. So it's been a long time in the making, but I'm really, really excited to have it out. So
well, thanks a lot, Kelly. Really appreciate it. We'll put the links to the hub and everything in the description of this episode. And thanks for coming down.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Thanks,
everyone.
Okay.